to Crypto Clothesline. We're glad to be here with you. Hanging out the crypto laundry. Getting all the crypto info for you. Crypto Clothesline. Crypto Clothesline.
Hello, hello.
Are you okay? It's you okay? Are you okay, Day? No. Hi.
What are you doing?
Do you really want to know?
That's rude. Put it away.
No. Where does your mind go?
Everywhere.
I have Airbnb guests that arrived in the middle of the night from Germany. So I have complete strangers, so to speak, in my house. I've locked myself in the garage and it's the middle of the day. It's stinking hot. And I've got a diffuser on with essential oils, diffusing everywhere. And I've got a lamp. And I look like I'm some sort of cave-dwelling hermit. But I'm actually just trying to A, not disturb them, and B, not be disturbed by, people that have just arrived in a strange country, gone from -20 to +35.
Oh, how are they going? Do you have aircon?
I've got a fan in one of the rooms, and yes, we have aircon in the house. But on the whole, I think they're just, when you're just so spaced out, when you do that culture jump, that country jump. And I know we recently got back from Rishikesh, and it took me probably a full 5 days to actually arrive, because I was physically in one country, but there was still part of me sort of yearning for the experiences and the feeling I was having in the other one. And my kids even picked up on it. They said, "You don't want to be here with us, Mum. You just want to be back there." And I was like, yeah, there's probably a bit of truth in that. But it wasn't because I didn't want to be with my kids. It was about the feeling of freedom and those long lounging breakfasts where you were sitting in these cafes and talking to foreigners from all over the world about life, the universe, everything, crypto, blockchain, all sorts of things being brought into the conversation, Muji, and ordering chais and literally watching the Ganges, shuffle on past, and so beautiful. So it was trippy coming here. So I am empathic for the fact that they're fast asleep. And I'm kind of wondering what it'll be like when I leave this dark womb of a garage and go and meet them.
Well, they know.
You did ask me what I'm doing.
Yeah. Do they know that you're from the famous Crypto Clothesline, and when you step out that they need to stand from their seats and
the standing ovation?
Yeah.
Well, no, but what I did do was rip out pages out of my my workbook and write podcast recording. Shh, please. And then a big smiley face. Like I did the shh mummy thing, and then I did the smiley face to try and counteract the bossiness of the shh. But, I already have 3 kids romping around the house, and then there's Saven, who's home at the moment, who, is Italian. So the whole idea of being quiet is often on a different plane. Doing dishes is voluminous with Saven. And now I've got Germans as well. So we've got a very international household, and I do love it. It's just tricky when we're doing this. What are you up to?
Oh, what am I up to? I'm just juggling. I'm trying to figure out.
Well, you had an event last night. Can I help you out here? You had an event last night. Can you talk a little bit about that in the Sunshine Coast?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of events on the future, and it always scares me, and I feel like I'm doing, how you subconsciously set yourself up to deal with what's coming because it's going to be big. And so I've set up these events so people know about all these really awesome technologies like drones and AI and blockchain and security, all these things. And last night was a presentation on the Internet of Things and also blockchain. So we had Lucas Cullen come up and do a presentation on blockchain. And we also had another technologist who came in and talked about the Internet of Things and how we're all connected, like literally connected. And he's like, so the Sunshine Coast is number 7 on the smartest cities in the world. So we're having all of, there's billions and billions of dollars being poured in here to create smart cities, basically. Like, for example, the new smart city centre will have vacuums. So there will be no rubbish trucks or no rubbish bins. Rubbish will just go under the ground and get sucked out with a vacuum into a central processing centre.
But hang on. Before you go into that, how can that be when you sent me a video about a year ago of entire power outages in the entire area because of a storm, because of summer storms. All the power went out, and you were sending me a video of feeling really disgusted because Coles or Woolies or something were just throwing out entire container loads full of food. So what about all the problems with power outages?
No, they need to do a lot of work, but I guess the difference is their innovation.
They're planning for it.
They're planning to innovate in a way where there's just going to be massive power saving. There's a cable going in where we will have direct access via an actual cable to Asia. So probably we're going to have super fast internet. Hopefully we won't be relying on as much 5G as other places. But also, he said, like, there's these little sensors in our bins. I didn't even know that sense how much rubbish is in our bins, and these sends it off to the bin collection centre, and they know in the future it's going to be the bin collectors will come around if the sensor is telling them that your bin is past the halfway mark, and so then they'll save costs on just doing every bin irrespective of whether it's got 2 bags in it or not, so it will save. And then people won't get fired. They'll just be like, so you've got extra time, how about you go change the light bulb in this street light, and can you please go check this meter? And, you know, they'll be trained in other areas. But like, he showed all these devices that he has and how we're literally connected in, like, our toasters, our fridges, everything that we do is connected to a cloud of some sort. And the data will be, he guaranteed it, that the data, even from our fridges, will be sold. Like, it's to me, I'm educating myself. That's why I organize these meetups. But like, I'm worried about.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We talk about surveillance, getting your passport checked at the airport with the whole Five Eyes deal, but you know, this is a whole new level of surveillance. Like, you know, there might be a little voice coming out going, "Are you sure you wanted to open that fridge door? Are you sure aren't you still dairy free?" I don't know why a horrible male American accent came through then, but
well, I think so, but he pitched it in a way where it was all positive though. So he was saying you wear these so instead of going to the doctors every week, you wear this armband, which is pretty cool, and it tracks everything, like, so different metrics, and it just sends those details to your doctor. So, you know, if anything spikes, it just sends it to your doctor. You don't have to do anything. You just wear this chip on your arm.
No.
And he's just saying, partner that with your fridge. So partner your spikes in blood sugar level, and then it connects to your fridge that says you actually had 8 chocolate cookies from the fridge. Like, of course your heart rate's going to go up, you crazy person. Stop eating chocolate cookies. Or something like that. You know, it's going to track the food that... anyway.
Oh my gosh, it's so 1984-ish. It's horrible.
Look, this is the way of the future, though. I just want people to, you know, understand that things are changing super, super quick, and we don't even know that it's happening right under our noses.
You need to come and do those over here. Or can I suggest, that we do our events on different nights, because we always have our events on the same night, but I would love it to be live streamed so people like I can jump in and join in.
Yeah, it's going to be. Well, I now have a co-organizer who is the Internet of Things guy, Nick Brown, and he works for the university over here. So he's come on board and he's looking to implement all of the technology that we need to live stream, because we've had a bank and another university who would like to be able to watch interstate. So I think we're going to need the live stream, so it's coming. But I need someone who's really good at it to organize it.
I mean, last night we had an event too, and I live streamed it just through my phone. And it had 67 views by the time we'd finished the event. Now, that doesn't sound like very much, but it is a dinky little Facebook page. I think we've got like 43 likes. So it's not something that I have a lot of time to devote to. It's a non-for-profit. So yeah, I was actually kind of gobsmacked. And even one of our biggest fans, the beautiful Matt Adore from Facebook, had set up a watching party. So I'm like, oh, he's got his gorgeous just 1-year-old, I think, with massive teething issues, and he's like, I'm not coming out, but I'll watch it from afar. So yeah, and honestly, the event, so can I tell you about the event we had? I promise I won't talk.
Yes, because you had our guest that we're speaking to today.
That's right. So we interviewed Thomas Miller, and I was looking for somebody who could comment on how blockchain or some other emerging technology could help people who help people. So I had been connected through our mutual friend Noah Klein. Noah Klein is based in the States, and he actually heard all about our interview with Gemma Green. We're going down this massive rabbit hole, the crypto clothesline rabbit hole. Anyway, he had heard the Gemma Green interview. He got in touch with us, and we've been sort of chatting to him ever since. And he mentioned Alison Thompson. I started to watch Alison Thompson's TED Talks because I thought, from what he said, it sounded inspiring. When I listened to Alison Thompson, we were setting up the Money Show, and I had this strong feeling that I wanted to have her on to talk about transacting in love, transacting in human care, as opposed to money being a unit of cash or something like that. So anyway, long story short, she came to be our guest speaker in Women in Blockchain last night, and we invited Thomas and also Stephen Alexander to come on as the sort of tech experts. So she's talking about the work she was doing in aid all over the world, and it's unbelievable what she does. Please listen to her TED Talk. Having her speak live from Miami, and I said, okay, just tell us what you do. Tell us. She was involved in a crypto scam. So there was a crypto organization that raised a whole heap of money for them and walked away with a whole lot. So she was a real live person doing beautiful work and got ripped off in the crypto sphere. And, tell us what you need. So then Alexander and Thomas were taking notes during the whole thing. And then at the end of the presentation, boom, 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 they kind of riffed on all the ways that they could create the architecture, that they could create the software in order to meet her needs. And it was like we were saying, like, we're really tired of talking about it. What can we actually do to help this person who's doing such amazing work in the world? So that was Women in Blockchain last night. It was so heart-centered. It was so focused in the heart. And the people that were there were coming up and asking questions and being able to speak with her in real time. So, in our interview with Joe this morning, he talked about needing to be able to contact and speak to the team behind, coins or cryptocurrency or ICOs. Well, in this case, you can actually contact this lady and speak to the person who's making this amazing difference in the world. So it was super inspiring.
Yeah, and for all our listeners, the episode with Alison Thompson goes live on the 25th of May.
It's a fascinating thing, and to hear her journey last night was amazing. So that was our Women in Blockchain. It was a woman who needs blockchain's help.
So this season is all about money, currency, how we transact, how we transfer value in different ways, whether it be fiat or cryptocurrency or the barter system. It's all about money, and we're talking about the different concepts behind it, whether it be trading love and happiness, or trading, if you clean my car, I'm going to do something really nice for you. And we just want to welcome you to the Crypto Clothesline.
We do. We just do.
This season is all about money.
Well, we'd like to welcome you to Crypto Clothesline. Our show is about helping women join the blockchain wealth revolution for themselves, for their families.
Our names are amy-rosegoodey and Abida Catherine Pass. We're speakers in blockchain and crypto, and we're on this mission.
We are learning together with you.
Talking with leading experts in the space, exploring cutting-edge technology projects that are shaping the future for our children.
This podcast is for intelligence and growth, and our values are for peace, harmony, and collaboration on the planet.
Let's have a listen to Thomas Miller.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Crypto Clothesline. Thomas Miller, you are a blockchain developer, the CTO at Metamorph, and the director of NXT Legal. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Thomas, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on at the moment?
Welcome to the Crypto Clothesline.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much, both of you, for having me. Well, originally, this all started out, I was a biomedical engineer, studied engineering brackets medical at QUT, so very different. I've always been fascinated by the internet and these web technologies, so I was very early in discovering the power of smart contracts, and in end of 2014, start of 2015, I started running meetups in Brisbane about smart contract technology and specifically Ethereum. So I ran the Brisbane Ethereum meetups. No one was doing it in my city. And I thought, I really want Brisbane to understand this technology as fast as possible. And I've spent the last 5-6 years educating people about the technology, blockchain. And, we always knew that there was going to be better technologies that become available, inspired by blockchain and other things in nature. And so I'm kind of been on the blockchain bandwagon for some time. Banks get on blockchains, to the point where we're evolving to the next sort of, I think it's going to be a better step change than what blockchain provides.
Thomas, you talked a little bit about when you mentioned banks, and you mentioned to me that you were instrumental in getting a bank online in the Philippines. You also talked about not being very happy with the outcome. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
The application of blockchain technology, we all have a for-profit motive inside our brain, but I wasn't very happy about one of the banks trying to get lots of other smaller banks on blockchain. And the main motive for that was to get everybody on loans in the little communities. And if everyone's on a loan, then that just raises the price of housing and then pushes, basically turns all those little villages into unaffordable areas. And I know that was true because I went to the sort of a shareholder party / meeting about it. And that was what they were very happy about. That was their biggest metric, how many loans they've got people on. Yeah, it wasn't a nice, everyone was very happy and cheery and we're making lots of money and they're using blockchain to do it. And for me, that just didn't really resonate well with my ethics. That now we're just going to get a bunch of poor people on loans as well.
Oh, okay. So it's really affecting the local community, not just, say, more affluent buyers. It's actually affecting the local people.
Yeah, because their whole plan is to get all the regional banks on this technology so that, they can sell loans to them. So it just... unless there wasn't any type of ethics around, what's the real solutions or what's ethical in loans. But I mean, I think we all know what's going to happen. Everyone, each villager is going to be competing against each other on who can get the biggest loan out of their bank. And that just raises the prices of houses, and then unaffordability kicks in, and they're constantly working every month just to send a bit of energy off to a central authority. And although the chairman of the bank didn't want that to happen, that's basically where the middle management were taking it.
That's horrible. I can imagine you would have felt uncomfortable about that, considering some of the things you've spoken about around cryptocurrencies for communities and on blockchain for communities. So you've got quite a decentralized approach to blockchain and other technologies. So where did you go from that point?
Well, I mean, the biggest effect, I felt bad because, you think about these families who don't have loans or who are doing things, and there's other types of ways of raising capital for at the moment villagers do get by, and sure there are benefits that a bigger bank can provide to the smaller banks that can provide it to the end users. But what got me was that I've seen the amount of stress a loan can do to a family, and what I was feeling is that the impact is that there's going to be lots of arguments in those villages, and there's going to be lots of changes and different power structures where a central authority can repossess land now, and the villagers probably wouldn't even been aware of that in the first place. And so, it's more the devastation of all the emotional abuse that's going to happen from that, which is where I feel sad about the whole thing.
That's a really interesting and enlightening viewpoint, because most people possibly wouldn't have even considered that, let alone discussed it on a podcast.
And also, I had no idea that the banks were even using blockchain to that extent. This is the first that I've heard about the application for regions and that sort of thing. So, I mean, considering you were at the event, you had some sort of say in the whole thing, did you voice your opinions, or did you just ditch it and go, not interested?
Oh, I did to employees, but there was no point. It's people are very sort of one way, they live in a system, they mimic a system. It's kind of very hard to describe a holistic approach when one style of banking is the only banking they've ever known. It's the culture of banking, really. Banking is corrupt. It's pretty clear. There's lots of good people in banking, lots of good banking systems, but on the whole, it's changing, and this technology has been created because of that level of corruption. Yeah,
we had an interview with Sophia Matt, who wrote an article called Gandanomics, and she talked exactly about that Satoshi and the creation of Bitcoin in 2008 and the mining that started in 2009 was a kickback, a response to the collapse of the Lehman Brothers and all of the nasty-pasty business that went on in the global financial crisis.
Yeah, I like to say it's no mistake that Bitcoin came out 3 months after the GFC.
Yeah, that's exactly what she writes about.
Do you think there's something a little more sinister though? I mean, are you into any conspiracy theories about who Satoshi really is?
I'm just not interested in it. All these Bitcoin people get, so patriotic or tribal about their technology and Satoshi and all this sort of stuff. And the problems that I'm facing is more, and the types of thoughts that consume my brain is how can we create a society that's fair, that's accountable, that's transparent, that's easy to understand, and whatever technology or non-technology or stories or new cultures that we want to introduce to make that possible. That's kind of what my mind is always consumed about. We've got a new moment in every moment to reassess things and work out, well, okay, that's great. What's next?
So can you answer that question? I'm writing it down and you spoke so quickly. But you said, how can we create a society that's fair, transparent, easily understandable, ... So I hope you forgive me for not getting beyond that.
That's right. Yeah.
How would you use technology to help other people?
Well, I think an important thing is to realize that we haven't had the technology to really create something that's scalable. Like blockchain's not scalable, and it's an early implementation of, just like we had triple entry accounting. Well, this is multiple checks or redundant databases, because that's all blockchain is. It's a redundancy. But ultimately, my personal goal is to create environments where other people can use or implement these accountable systems or very redundant databases, and with privacy enabled, in any customizable way that they want. So I'm just trying to create the right sort of environment where that can happen and thrive. So I don't have any one opinion about how it's meant to happen. I think it's going to be a sum of everyone's sort of brains. But one of the big things that I do believe in is holistic accounting, and how we can start tracking other forms of value flows so that we are not just comparing everything to fiat currency, which seems to be just so one-minded. It's kind of like saying that if we only have one fiat currency, it's like saying let's only have one species of tree on the planet, when actually, there's lots. It's a monoculture, and currencies and people who learn how to develop or create currencies and tap into how their brain actually thinks about currencies as well. Like, for an example, like if I go to a party and there's two funny people and one serious person at the party, your brain actually keeps a tabs on everybody, how funny they are. If they're not funny, your brain does this naturally, and we're actually dealing with thousands of currencies every day. We just don't realize it. Like, we look at a tree, how green is a tree? Is it really green? Everything has a bank, and I really liked like you can think of karma banks, and we can start creating a web of trust that can't really be fake. And I guess one of the really sort of exciting things or projects that I'm most excited about these days is Holochain, and then the actual dApps that can be built on top of the Holochain protocol or programming pattern. And then also how we can sort of allow holistic banking to be enabled for every single person or item or company or anything, but in a holistic way. So I'm very excited by an accounting system that's been created many years ago and used by some of the largest organizations in the world very successfully. It's called REA accounting. So REA stands for Resource, Event, and Agent. And if you think about it, if we just wanted to create a log of all the activities that happens in an organization or a group of people that come together for a common cause, that's what REA accounting does. It tracks the agents that are involved, like the parties. If it's a resource, like say for instance, you could even be treating money as a resource. Like what's the resource? So maybe 100 Australian dollars, or it could be 100 apples, or it could be 100 leaves, and then the event. So what's the story around that event? And I've got a very limited understanding of REA accounting, but I see huge possibilities for lots of businesses to implement that. And then what you can do is, after you see a bunch of events start coming through on these verifiable logs, most likely going to be powered by Holochain, then you can start batching these events into classes of events. So then you can see, oh, well, this charity has actually done 20,000 handout of foods, or handed out food to 20,000 people, but it's all the same. It's just a framework that, just like we think of, oh, how do I need to optimize my day to make the most amount of money? This can be, how do we optimize my day to create the most amount of these types of events that we care about? Or it's a way of measuring things and also bringing accountability.
So would kindness or honesty or sympathy be a resource that's measurable too?
I think it is. So if you can measure events, but if, say, for instance, somebody gave something to another agent, or there was a gift there, or a free massage or something, why can't that be measured? And if someone's gone out and given 100 massages, then that can be put against their profile. They can choose to make that public, and that should be able to give them extra perks in society. And they might do it in Australia, but be able to go all the way over to France and show the proof that they did do this. And this is this was the ratings of their massages, and these are the real people. And so what can be created is a breadcrumb, a trail of breadcrumb data that you just can't really fake. It's like when you go to a Facebook profile and you can tell what the fake ones are and what the real ones are, because the the real ones have a lot of friend data in there and they're a lot more rich. So eventually we'll get to that point.
Thomas, do you know what comes to mind is the idea of a mother, and I'm sure it's a father too, but I'm not a father, I'm a mother, and all the meals and all the driving and all the running around. And how they say, you work 24/7, you never get paid. It goes on for your whole life. We would have amazing resource banks. We could travel the world getting repaid for all of that. What do you think about that?
I think it's a beautiful idea, and same for fathers doing the same. They can be recognised in the workforce that they're doing things as well, doing things that are helping. And this is where it comes to what I like to call impact reporting, is where then you can eventually show the impact of bringing up a good child in society and the difference that they're making. And so you can start tracking all this value. And it's just going to be an easier world. And it's not, people are not going to optimize on just ripping people off or getting money out of somebody.
So, Thomas, you've been working on blockchain for small communities. What's your experience with the success of that?
I think blockchain is broken. The success is, it's all very well that, say, for instance, it's very easy to roll out a blockchain system for a community. But the thing is that now you then have to go and tell people that they have to go and buy Ether just to do a transaction. And so that's not very fair, that they then now need to go and buy another resource just to be able to have access to their local resources or do trade. So it's kind of never been able to kick off successfully for that reason, because people expect banking shouldn't be that expensive. To do an Ethereum transaction is about 5 cents. So that's the goal of Ethereum, was to make that a lot cheaper, and that just hasn't happened. We've tried, but if everyone has to spend 5 cents just to do a transaction in their local community, then that kind of doesn't make sense. One of the things I like to describe in this whole timeline of things is that, Bitcoin was great. It was a way to transact without a central authority, and that happened. It worked really well. It happened really successfully. And then Ethereum was a way to do more custom transactions and this idea of smart contracts, and that worked really well as well. But when you look at blockchain has become very centralized. All the miners, it's a central power, really, and it's actually, the incentives are actually making it even more centralized. So I think people will be really shocked when they discover that blockchain is actually not very decentralized as they think. And I think that you can't really label blockchain as a decentralization technology anymore, especially the public chains, because of that reason. But obviously we evolved from that, and we thought, well, hang on, there's another technology called Holochain, and it's actually using the technology behind BitTorrent, so that downloading of movies, which in 2014, I read a report that it had done about half of all media transfers around the world, competing with Facebook and Google. And what's cool about it is that it's a system that allows two peers to transact without any central authority. So you can refer to the blockchain as a central authority, and you have to actually, if you and me want to do a trade, we actually have to get permission from the Ethereum chain or the Bitcoin chain, and we have to work inside their rules. And that's a perception on how a programmer sees the world. You basically aren't submitting for permission again. Whereas on Holochain, if you and me want to do a transaction, you and me just agree the rules, and the signal doesn't go outside you and me. So it's a completely peer-to-peer system. And that's all we're trying to do. We're basically building a bunch of new agreements for all the scenarios that we're in. And it doesn't need to be broadcast to the world or on a public chain unless we want it to, for really good reasons. Like we want to show how ethical we are, or we want to show how funny we are, or there's a lot of reasons, or you've got a shared bank account together and you want to report all your transactions to, maybe you have a bank account for your family and you might have a shared account together, and we never do that, but it would be cool to do that. And then maybe the whole family has a shared bank account with the people that they live on their street, and we never do that either. Why haven't we done that? Because banking is, a source of control. And then, that street could then be a member of all the streets and have a shared bank account for that neighborhood. This is just one idea that's possible. This is not really possible on blockchain, but just because it's not scalable to be able to handle all these transactions, and especially the multi-signature functionality. So the grassroots approach has just not really taken off. But I do really actually seeing this possible with Holochain, which is a newer technology inspired by old and also using old proven technology as well.
So when you spoke about having a collective bank account, so you talked about having a family one and then scaling it up to perhaps the people on your street, and then taking that to a larger community one. And, you mentioned even in another conversation, you could potentially have a bank account for the whole country. I guess my old banking brain is trying to get my head around how that would work. and who would have access to, say, withdraw funds and things. Because if I personally think about the people that live on my street, I'd probably be a little bit frightened to be sharing a bank account with them. What would be the reason for that and the use of that?
I think it's so that people can manage so say for instance your street has a pothole in it. Who's going to realize that pothole is there first?
I guess the person who drives down the street.
Somebody on the street, or someone who lives on the street. If they've got a pothole out the side of their house, then they're going to recognize that, and they'll be able to put that up as a job, and it just on a news feed on their bank account. Think of banking mixed with social media, and then there might be some funds in there. There might not be any funds in there, but then at least it's a platform where people can start to decide, and now they've also got a shared bank account where they can start to decide how they want to move those funds and what are those multi-signature rules going to be.
So you mentioned, Thomas, that you were working on Holochain, or using that technology. Is there anything that you're developing on that at the moment that you'd like to talk about with respect to some of the holistic approaches that we've mentioned?
My main thing is really inspiring more developers to start moving on to Holochain. The more developers we can get interested about building on the technology, which is happening, and planning things out, then we'll be able to build more things. We're going down the process of actually registering a standard normal bank at our legal financial services law firm, and I've done that moved into this environment on purpose because I've spent so many years in the developer world, and it's always been a little bit difficult for a developer to do something without knowing, how the law is going to react to it. So it just made a lot of sense to actually just work from within a financial services law firm that has the backbone to just start a standard normal bank. So, it's my vision in a few years or even less that people will be able to send Australian dollars to a Holochain powered bank using a BSB and an account number, and then that can transfer value into other things that Holochain is capable of doing, or moving it into the Holochain ecosystem.
And so when you talk about moving it into the Holochain ecosystem, are you talking about, say, for example, different things that they want to contribute their funds to, or different communities, or their family, or the local street, or how would that look on a practical sense?
Basically giving developers the power to put native standard banking into a normal website, and so that there could be for charity raising funds. Why is it that charities raise funds or people put money into charities but you can't even see where the money is next? Like, you should instantly be able to see where it is next with no clearing times or any of that. And so there hasn't really been a technology to make that possible. And then older style banks, they're so risk adverse, they'll never do this themselves because, things are pretty good for them. Why would they go transparent with their finances? So the idea is that, new banks are going to set up and start doing this instead. And they're going to do it because they want to be more competitive, and things are in change.
So, for example, if I was to contribute some funds to a local organisation that's doing some beautiful work in the world, and I can't necessarily go and join them, but I would like to support them. So I send my funds, and I can see there's transparency about where my funds are being used. That's
correct. Yeah, you'll be able to see where it's gone. You can get notifications every time those funds move. And it might be a rule that part of the rule is in the charity, you might get notifications until it's less than $5 transfer or something like that, or value of $5, or it reaches somebody who's, chosen to have more privacy on their Holochain account. We're just hypothesizing at the moment. But yeah, that's been kind of a big disconnect. How do you do privacy on blockchain? And it's just not really, it's been a bit of a clunky approach, but Holochain, it seems to be a lot easier.
Is Holochain decentralized?
Yeah, it's very decentralized. It's peer-to-peer.
Okay.
So I would go and say that peer-to-peer is more decentralized.
When you said that the blockchain, you need permission, basically, that owns you if you want to do a transaction, I'm just a little bit confused how Holochain might be different, because you still need to use that technology if you want to do a transaction. So is that not the same? Can you just correct me?
They're very different. The thing with blockchain is we created these computer systems that would go and verify transactions, and this idea of mining, which is they're not really miners. That was just a sort of like a way to describe it. But they're people that put their computers up to do processing for the network, for a blockchain network. And that's fine, but it turned into a game on who could provide the most processing power, and then a game on who could buy the biggest GPUs, and that all centralized. And then that's why you get these big mining rigs sitting in China or around the world, and they process lots of these transactions. But the thing is, blockchain's really heavy and clunky, but they were going for maximum security where they got every node to verify every single transaction. And if you think of things like triple entry accounting, I mean, when you're doing a money transaction under $100 or under 1,000 or 2,000 or 20,000, one of the things I realized a few years into blockchain, I was like, well, it's kind of a waste of energy to have so many computers verifying every single transaction and spending all that power. You kind of only need about 100 computers, and that's pretty high security, like really high security, to verify transactions, and that solves the scalability issue as well. So you don't really have that customization with blockchain, well, for the public blockchain networks. So Holochain said, well, why don't we code that into our into our architecture where, you know, as you're saving information, or you choose with your app how many computers you want it to be. They call it the redundancy number. Like, how many computers do you want that data to be copied or verified by? And every app has its own separate blockchain as well. And what that allows is for massive scalability. And it's not a blockchain. Every app has its own chain data. They call it Holochain, actually.
Okay, so is that secure? When it comes to blockchain, apparently it can't be hacked. Now, in the future, that might change. But are there any risks associated with putting currency on Holochain when it comes to hacks and that sort of thing?
Well, put it this way: you could build an Ethereum or Bitcoin consensus mechanism on top of Holochain. You could do that if you wanted to. It just goes a lot lower level in how you're managing everything and managing the transactions. And it provides the ability for you and me to do a transaction in a peer-to-peer fashion where, do you understand public-private key in cryptography?
Yeah.
So basically it's where I have a secret and I create a public key to that secret, and I would attach a message to it, and I'd send it over to you. You would create one as well. And what we can do is backwards and forwards verify that each of us are the senders. And then once we can verify that, then we know that we're both using the same set of rules. So Holochain is basically, the start of it is just a web of cryptographically secure transactions that happen in a peer-to-peer fashion. And then you can start then creating other architectures where you can say, well, hang on, if we're going to turn this into something that we want even more validated, not just you and me validating each other's, you know, did Tom really add 2 + 2 and did it really equal 4? But have that checked by 4 or 5 or 20 other computers or 20,000 computers. So it's just a slightly different way of thinking about it all. It's just very scalable. That's the main thing.
But it is still secure in the way that blockchain is deemed to be secure?
Oh, absolutely secure, yeah.
I wanted to ask you, the season that we're embarking on is the season of money, or the money season. And what, in your opinion, is money? And based on that opinion, what do you see the future of money being?
People think I have very dreamy ideas, but I think people are going to be forced to think differently out of desperation. And I think we're just building a systems that track all events, so that we can then go and work out what events are happening and have conversations about what those was that a good event for society or was that a bad event? And I think this conversation about money is just going to slowly drift away as new entities and new small groups of people, like literally like a small team of 3 or 4 people can, you know, build systems that the whole world could use or be inspired by or improve. So everyone's just going to be tweaking these systems in the future, I think.
And so if I was going to rephrase, and tell me if I'm wrong, but if we were to look at what money is, then you would see it as a sort of a value transaction, but as opposed to it being the classic fiat or the cash economy, we're looking at the value of the acts of certain events, or whether you have acted in a way which is helping your fellow human being, or whether you're acting against them. And there's that transparency, which then leads to a reputation whereby, you know, you're getting somehow rewarded for the good acts that you're doing. Not that that's necessarily the intention, but is that...
Well, pretty much. I mean, at the moment, I can get rewarded with fiat currency and I can do bad events. So, you know, I can go and rob and get fiat currency. You know, there's a lot of bad things I can do. But if you start building just these events loggers systems that generates currency points because that event's been verified, and the only way to earn that currency is through doing these good events, that actually heal society and make a difference to the bigger picture, then you can't really, it's going to be a different world.
I agree. I think the world is going to be, especially with the Internet of Things coming into play. So I recently saw this really amazing shopping centre in Italy, I think it was, where it was a virtual shopping centre, but it would have everything from the impact on the planet of the product that you were viewing to how it would affect your health. And when you purchase that, that is, that's all stored in your account of the things that you've ever purchased. And what I imagine, and it seems a little similar to what you're saying, is perhaps even the products that we buy and our choices of the products that we buy and how it's going to impact on the planet. I think even that could tie in with, the value and the events.
Absolutely. I mean, a great example is I went to Bunnings the other day and I had to return a product because the thread wasn't properly checked on it. So I had to drive all the way back to Bunnings, take my time out, cost in fuel, cost to the planet. And I noticed, this was Sunday afternoon at Bunnings, I noticed that the return line was bigger than the purchasing line. And that's just a huge cost to society that happens all the time. I mean, if I had a way that I could quickly check on my phone the quality of that tap for a sink, then I wouldn't have bought that product. And so that product would never have been selling all the time. And if I could just check the quality of, the whole benchmarking process, or with Holochain, you could even upload a video of it because it's just got that much processing power and hosting power. It just would have changed everything. And then, even if I had to return something, at least I could track all these events and charge them back to Bunnings saying, look, I've spent money in fuel, I've spent money, and actually provide them the transactions there as well. And instead, now I have to wear the cost of the Australian dollar cost to Bunnings. There's just so many things when you start seeing this holistic accounting approach that just doesn't make sense at the moment until we can track all these events in a nice, easy to understand way.
Thomas, we have to close. Do you have any quote that you run by? Do you have a mantra that you'd like to share? Something that resonates with you?
I'm always trying to help people or inspire people to see through the lies and the BS, and transparency is a good tool for that. I don't know if I can just sort of say anything that is inspiring or anything cool about that. I think it's more be the change that you want to see in the world. The world is changing, and if you just beat your heart to what you care about, then people do just line up and help out. We are a bunch of, our human species has only got to this point because we are just amazing collaborators, incredible collaborators. And if you're bringing your truth, then people just align and they help you. And despite any financial firewalls or impossible rules, things change and things shift. And so speak your truth and what you care about.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Thomas, for coming onto the Crypto Clothesline podcast. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yes, it's been a pleasure to listen to you, and quite inspiring. It's lovely to hear a man speaking so positively about our future and having such a positive outlook.
Well, thank you very much for making this all possible.
You're welcome.
All right, so I think that with Thomas Miller's interview, similarly to the live recording that we did on Facebook of Women in Blockchain Perth last night, I think I really need to re-listen to it about 100 times to kind of get it, to get the whole thing. I'm starting to grasp concepts, but I do feel like he's transacting, so to speak, in a language which I haven't quite got grips on yet.
Well, he's a developer, and I don't want to shoebox developers, but with a lot of my interaction with developers, they don't fluff. They just say things as directly as they can, and it's like they're speaking to you literally in code, because that's what they do. They just code all the time. I don't know, they probably dance in code. It'd be a little bit of a new take on Dirty Dancing, a little bit of code dancing. I don't know.
You're including Dirty Dancing in the same category as a conversation with Thomas Miller. It's a bit cheesy. Sorry.
Not really. No, Dirty Dancing is my favourite movie.
I know it is. I've heard all about it, darling. But, so one can have a penchant for sausage rolls too, but you're not going to bring that to dinner with the Queen, are you?
The Queen, I bet you any money the Queen loves Dirty Dancing. I might actually find a news article about that. Put that in the show notes.
I think it's a bit like watching The Big Short and then having I think it's a little bit cryptic and it takes some unpacking. And then when you've got it and the penny drops, and I haven't quite had the penny dropping moment yet, but I'm working on it, then what I feel intrinsically is that Thomas is super serious about stuff and he is wanting to make a real change in the world. I wanted to just quickly read out what we said about him in the intro last night before Women in Blockchain, because I asked him if he could describe himself in sort of street speak. So, yeah, we were talking about Dirty Dancing and The Big Short, and he said something like this in a conversation we had online. He said, "Karma banks are the future. Banking is just a perception that a small group of people have instated according to their perception of the world. But because banking technology has now become free thanks to the latest advancements in computer science, anyone can create a banking/accountability system. And this system can now be a karma bank. A bank doesn't need to be set up only by psychopaths." So I feel that intrinsically the work that Thomas Miller wants to pass on to the world is the way that we can help each other as human beings. Fundamentally, I think that's the bottom line message.
I feel that it is a really utopian outlook, and we need about 100 Thomas Millers to create what it is he's envisioning, which is why I think our listeners, we need to put all the links to everything that Thomas Miller is doing so that people have an opportunity to participate in the things that he's building on Holochain, because this is a massive job. In my opinion, I think we're in a little bit of a battle with the people who are going to use this technology for their own reasons and perhaps even faster than the likes of Thomas will do. So I think we need to support the people like Thomas who are going to do amazing things on the planet so that we can beat them at their own game.
I think it's important to mention that he's working quite closely with Stephen Alexander, who we also spoke to yesterday, and another beautifully generous man wanting to, or not even just wanting to, but actively creating ways of measuring things like kindness and love and help and those what he calls intangibles. And he and Thomas are working really closely together, and watching them present and just riff last night, just talk, just this organic collection of ideas that came forward. Alison Thompson at the end of the conversation was so excited. You know, she's the doctor on the ground, literally in some of her videos. I said to you this morning, you can see her being videoed collecting limbs. That she's literally in hardcore places in the world. She said, we don't just work in natural disasters, or we work in man-made disasters too. So the way that these two men interacted to be able to provide a really practical tech solution to something that we're experiencing right here, right now, maybe not us, but she was inspiring. So I think that in a way it's utopia, but in another way it's actually a potentially practical answer and response to something that's going on right here, right now. And there's more and more need for humans to help humans because there's so much craziness going on.
Yeah, I know. That's why I just think that we need to drop what we're doing. Just consider maybe participating in something is going to better the planet. Well, on that note, I'll see you next week.
Yeah. See you next week.
Crypto Clothesline.